Right. Hi, I'm Sterry. I'm a family carer, and I'm just doing a discussion and talk on being a carer and how I deal with it.
Okay, Chris. So I was just going to ask a question, picking up on some of the things that we've talked about across the other videos. But obviously, you mentioned your age, and you mentioned the age of your wife, and I just wanted to briefly sort of touch on it because it is something that's happening increasingly, isn't it? And obviously, yourself and your wife care for your daughter who has learning disabilities. People with learning disabilities are living longer due to kind of health advancements. People in the population are living longer due to health advancements. And I just wondered,
to the same percentage.
No, not at all. It doesn't. It certainly doesn't match the national average. The life expectancy
report is really eye-opening.
Yes, yeah. So yeah, no, not the same at all. But it does mean that somebody could be caring for a son or a daughter or a sibling with learning disabilities into their 70s, 80s, 90s. And I just wondered what your thoughts were on, first of all, whether you had received any support around planning for the future and what you think should be happening about planning for the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true that because of the advances of medical science, people who would have died at a very early age are living much longer, as is the general population. But the percentage-wise, there is roughly a 20% gap between people of the same age of certainly learning disability who are living longer but nowhere near as long as people without a learning disability. That's an ongoing exercise through Bristol University. But taking that aside, yeah, I mentioned previously that a carer does not make a choice to be a carer, and they are a carer for as long as they can manage. They may need assistance, but in that progression of time, you would normally expect your children to move away. Yeah, they're still there, and as a parent, you've still got a slight responsibility. But when you've got a child with a learning disability and autism, even if that child moves away, that person is still there wanting support from yourself. Maybe at a distance, maybe at home, but support is still required while you are advancing in your own years and living longer than would have been expected.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be around about 70 or 80, and people living into their 80s, 90s, some even to the hundreds.
Mm.
Not many, but and your own abilities deteriorate.
Yeah.
But you're still providing that care with or without support. Hopefully with support. And you forget that you're not as young as you used to be. And you realise you can't do what you used to do. And that brings the guilt trip again. And it's a never-ending circle.
Yes.
You're doing what you can, you've got reduced abilities, the person you're requiring for still needs care, and possibly even more care, as they advance in years.
Yes.
But so do yourself. Now, I've said I'm approaching my 70th next year. My wife is approaching her 78th this year. But as carers, elderly carers, that is young. Quite a lot of carers are well into their 80s and into their 90s.
Mm.
And they're having to do what they can because the authorities may not know about them. The carer might not know what the authorities can do or not do, more like not do in the current climate.
And they might not trust them either. They
Well-
might have had some bad experiences
Oh,
themselves
yeah.
and decide they're going to do it themselves from here on in as well.
Well, we keep hearing about transitions, the 14 to 25. Well, transition was never good. I'd say it wasn't in Sheffield. From my own daughter's experience. But I hear now that it's still not good and possibly even got worse. So there's this, lessons will be learned. Lessons are never learned in any area. And I wish somebody could tell me why. I think it's because there's no money put into learning the lesson.
Yes.
It's all down to money. And you can't have a care system without money. Be it health or social care. They both work in tandem. And unfortunately this government thinks they can put a bit of money into the pot for health and reduce the pot for social care. It's blindingly obvious that if you reduce social care, that is having a detrimental effect on health. But this government seems to have got it in their minds that social care isn't required. I have got some outlandish views on that. I think they've got a view that they want to reduce the people on disability by killing them off. It's an outlandish view, but they are doing it. You hear all the horror stories of ESA and PIP and UC, sorry. And yeah, they may be the tip of the iceberg, but how many are below that tip that you don't even hear about?
Yeah.
It's horrendous. The UN has come down and told the government they're not doing it right. And the government has told the UN that they're mistaken. What is the point in being the UN if you discount what they say? I mean, I wish we could scrap the system and recreate it. And a lot of people have said that to me. But you can't crash the system. Well, the system's crashing itself at the moment. Because people still require the system to gain or to have what is insufficient.
Yes.
And there is going to be an almighty crisis if it's not already created. It won't be long in coming. And God help us when that occurs. Because the people requiring care who are suffering at the moment will be really suffering then. Well, the suffering might end because they most likely have gone too far that they're no longer here, which is my view what the government are looking for.
But yes, and going back to the point about the age of carers, obviously, if it's something that's quite a new situation, isn't it, where people with learning disabilities outlive their carers, and more often than not are outliving their carers. So that's or starting to move towards that. It used to be either that the person was in an institution, so their carers weren't involved in their life, or they died much younger. So now we've got this. So there will, the system is currently propped up by carers. We were talking earlier about that it saves this UK economy £132 billion, I think. That's what unpaid carers do. Yeah. Yes. So what happens as well then when these carers do die, and the person then goes from being fully supported by their carers or partially supported by their carers to then not, where's the support coming from? And I think from our own discussions and in the group we worked in, that's a huge source of anxiety about what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it is a situation that we ourselves, my wife and myself, have to consider, because we're not going to live forever. In fact, at certain times, I'm not sure if we're going to live tomorrow. But, and what will happen to our daughter if we don't provide? But there is a reluctance to do so, because we can see the system's not working at the moment, and we're here to keep an eye on it. If it's not working at the moment while we've got an eye on it, what is going to happen when we're not there to keep an eye on it?
Yeah.
Because there is nobody keeping an eye on it.
Mm.
And I know if my daughter's routine is not catered for, then all her autism tendencies will just erupt. And they'll say, she's got challenging behaviour. No, she doesn't have challenging behaviour. She may have behaviour that creates challenge, but it's because people aren't listening to her. It's down to communication again.
Yeah.
Because any behaviour that comes of what people call challenging is a form of communication. I'm not being listened to. And why is it that it's just because people have got learning or autism and they don't follow what we count as the norms? I mean, what is a norm? It's a farcical word. Because my norm is not your norm.
Yeah.
It's what society creates a norm. And it might not be my society, it might not be your society. It's somebody's society. But whose?
Yeah.
Most likely then up here with all the millions. It's not an ideal situation. It never will be an ideal situation. But somebody's got to look at it. And there is distrust. I mean, I've told CCG I don't trust them. They looked at me and aghast. I said, no, I don't. I mean, would you trust you? And then they look and think, no. But you don't get honest answers. That's if you actually get an answer. And I'm not just picking on CCG, local authorities are just as bad. And yes, they haven't got the resources. But does communication really cost so much?